So I'm part of this series that you've got on Tantra. And in some ways, I'm rather uneasy about talking about that, because how on earth do you talk about this? A lot of people hear the word Tantra, Google Tantra, and my goodness, you end up in some weird spaces which actually have absolutely nothing to do with Buddhism whatsoever. So forget everything you've heard about Tantra, except what Prajnapadaya said last week. I'm going to start with a story, which is in some ways a story which in a way goes back to the origins of Tantric Buddhism in India. So one day, a great Buddhist pandit, a great Buddhist scholar, was sitting outside his monastery, and he was with his back to the sun, an interesting detail, dressed in his, beautiful, neatly pressed robes, maybe red, yellow, very immaculate, proper, very senior monk, very perfect, a great scholar, a great teacher at the great monastery of Nalanda. And he's looking into the great Buddhist treatises to do with mind, nature of consciousness, epistemology, philosophy, grammar, all those things. And as he sat there studying away, this great shadow started to loom over the page that he was looking at. And he turned round and he saw this extraordinary sight. It was a very, very old woman, bent over, very black, wispy grey hair, hardly any teeth, walking with a stick, scantily dressed, red-eyed, kind of wispy beard, sort of moustache, really, really old, a real crone. And she's kind of muttering and licking her lips and making funny muttering noises, and really, really old. Really quite a sight, And she said, "What are you looking into?" And he said, "I study the books on epistemology and grammar and mind, the great Buddhist treatises." And she said, "Do you understand the words or the meaning?" And he said, "I understand the words." And she started to laugh and danced with joy. This old lady suddenly started to do a jig, really, really happy at what he said. And then he said, "I also understand the meaning." At which point she started to weep. She was really upset, really, really distressed, tears rolling down her face. So the great Buddhist scholar said, "Why was it you were so happy when I said I understood the words, and so sad when I said I understood the meaning?" She said, "Well, I respected you because when you said you understood the words, it was true. You were being truthful. But when you said you understood the meaning, you were lying. You don't understand the meaning." And of course, this was a huge shock to this great Buddhist scholar. And he said, "Well, who does understand the meaning?" He said, and she said, the old lady said, "My brother." And the Buddhist scholar said, "Well, where can I find your brother who will give me the meaning?" He said, "Well, you'll have to find him yourself." At which point she vanished into space. So this story is the story of the great Buddhist, originally the great Buddhist pandit Kirti, who became the great tantric yogin Naropa. And it's very, very illustrative of the origins of Tantra. Tantric Buddhism really starts to get going in response to the scholasticism that had developed in Indian Buddhism these great monasteries, which are really remarkable, wonderful places of learning. We shouldn't disparage them, but it is true that in some ways Buddhism was getting walled up, if you like, within the monasteries. It was, in a way, removing itself from the streets, from the villages, from the jungles, from the people, from the cities, from the marketplaces. And in some ways, Tantric Buddhism is a kind of response to that. In a way, it's a resurgence of real Buddhism, the Buddhism of the Buddha. In some ways, Tantric Buddhism is rather like the Buddha and his own early disciples. It's getting back, especially, to direct experience. Do you understand the words, or do you understand the meaning? Do you know what these words are pointing to? And the symbolism is extraordinary because, of course, the old lady is a Dakini, a feminine, a female wisdom deity. And this is a Dakini. And very often Dakinis are sort of 16 years old and extraordinarily beautiful. But frequently, in the origins of Tantric Buddhism, they are old ladies, really old ladies. They're frightening ladies in some ways. And she's dark. In a way, she symbolizes everything that's sort of rejected by a highly, if you like, sophisticated society. She's sort of an old woman. So she is rejected. But she has wisdom. She speaks wisdom to the great scholar. And it has a devastating effect on him because immediately he leaves the monastery to try and find her brother. It's quite a journey. It's a sort of dreamlike journey, if you like. It's a very symbolic journey. Eventually he finds her brother. His name is Tilopa. And Tilopa puts him through all sorts of trials, all sorts of tribulations. We're going to continue with that in a moment about what the trials and tribulations are before he can receive the teaching. But I just want to stay with this business of an encounter with wisdom from a completely unexpected source. It still happens in India, this kind of thing. It probably happens in other places as well. I lived in India for many years, and one day I was on tour in a district called Nasik in Maharashtra, giving Dharma talks to Indian Buddhists, the followers of Dr. Ambedkar, the great Buddhist revival in India. And we went to this particular town where I'd heard there was a lot of conflict between the Buddhists in that town. And I think this town, where was it? It was Manmad, I think, which is a railway town. Railway towns are very, very interesting in India. They're kind of, well, you can imagine what a railway town's like. I don't need to go into that. Big junctions and, Anyway, very interesting places. But anyway, there's a lot of conflict among Buddhists. But me being a special guest to give a Dharma talk, and in those days I was a monk, I was wearing yellow robes. Me and my interpreter and our Sangha, we gave this huge talk. Everybody wanted to turn up. There's a photograph of me somewhere disappearing under garlands, because in India people like to garland you, and they were putting so many garlands on me, I couldn't take them off quickly enough. So I was sort of disappearing behind these flowers. It's a great way to go, I think. Anyway, I did this talk and I talked a lot about harmony and unity within the Sangha among the people and how important that was. Anyway, did the talk, people were very pleased, stayed in a lodge that night, and I was sitting in my lodge, my hotel room in the morning with my interpreter drinking tea, and this old lady came in. Classic Maharashtrian old lady with her 9-meter sari, and she was the cleaner of the room, and she was squatting as only Indian people can, Indian women can, just moving across the room, sweeping the floor, and she was talking away in Marathi, and my interpreter saying, be silent, And I said, no, what's she saying? because she wasn't only talking, she was weeping. And I said, no, I want to know what she's saying. And he started to translate. And she said, those people, they should listen to you. You were speaking the truth. You were speaking about harmony. They should listen to you. And she went on and on about the importance of harmony and unity. And it was a real teaching. It was so direct. And my interpreter was a bit of an intellectual, and he wasn't getting it. But the message was so powerful, this powerful communication about the importance of togetherness within a community from this old illiterate lady sweeping my floor. I told a friend of mine, Lokamitra, about this, and he said, I had exactly the same experience in that hotel room 5 years ago. And we were actually wondering if this woman sort of really existed, or whether she was a sort of Dakini figure that was sort of, you know, any kind of Buddhist visitor got this, yes, you're doing the right thing, you just need to do it more, you know. It's amazing, you know, but it's very direct communication, no sophistication, just direct from the heart, pure meaning, pure meaning. And if we're going to talk about Tantric Buddhism, well, that's one of the things we have to talk about. Tantric Buddhism is about direct, immediate experience, even confrontation. It's sometimes said of the Tantric Guru, who's called also the Vajra Guru, Vajra meaning diamond hard, adamantine, meaning reality, naked reality, the truth cutting through. Sangha said the Vajra Guru is, what he really is the known, or she, there are female Tantric Gurus, they are the no-nonsense gurus. Absolutely no nonsense. They're not interested in anything other than you waking up. You waking up from your ignorance, from the way you're kind of deluding yourself, cheating yourself, being lost in words, lost in chains of thought. Whether or not you regard yourself as an intellectual, we all get lost in words. Ideas about who we are, what we are, who other people are, what other people are. Constant proliferation of ideas. We need to get back to the direct reality, the direct experience of what is actually happening. That's what Tantric Buddhism is about. So Naropa's life story is, I can't go into all of it, his training with Tilopa is highly symbolic. Tilopa's constantly getting him to do the most terrible trials and tests. You know, so there's a wedding procession going on in this town. And Tilopa says, oh, Naropa. And Tilopa was very, very weird. He awoken by being hit on the face with a fish. You know, fish sort of slapped him in the face. He woke up to reality. And, you know, try that at your local fishmongers. Will you give me a slap on the face, please? Anyway. And so there's this great wedding procession, you know, very lots of pomp. And Tilopa said, if I had a real disciple, he'd go over to that procession, he'd pull the bride and groom off, and he'd rough them up. You know, so Naropa, that's what he wants me to do. So he runs over, and of course, he gets completely hammered and beaten up. And, you know, he's lying on the floor, sort of bloodied and bruised and broken. And Tilopa says, well, what are you doing, Naropa? And he said, happiness, bliss, is to offer my body as a mandala offering in full faith and devotion. And then Tilopa said, Naropa, look into your mind, the secret home of the Dakini. So this happens again and again. Of course, it's highly symbolic. You know, don't go and, you know, rough up a wedding procession and think you're going to have a realization. It's very dreamlike, symbolic story. But of course, what it's concerned with, what Tilopa is doing with Naropa, he's really challenging his egotism, his pride, his conceit. Because what stops you from the direct experience of reality is your self-view. your self-identity, your sense of being a particular kind of person in a particular kind of relationship to other people. And until that's removed, you cannot have the encounter directly with reality. So frequently the stories within Tantric Buddhism between the teacher and the disciple is to do with the teacher, really testing the disciple, really testing them to really challenge their self-identity, their egotism. It's strong stuff. That's why I'm uneasy talking about Tantra. I can't give you any bullet points at the end of this talk for you to discuss things, because I think this is really too demanding. We shouldn't really be talking about this stuff. But anyway, it's on the program. So you can't have sort of beginner's Tantra. That's just not possible, because it's to do with waking up immediately to what's actually happening without preconception, without all your ego trips, being brought to bear. It's interesting, Sangha, our teacher, before he was even ordained as a Buddhist monk, he met some very, very interesting people and, teachers of different traditions. And in his early wandering days, deep in South India, down in Bangalore, Karnataka, he has an encounter, spent some time with a kind of Hindu tantric, very unorthodox figure named Yalahankar Swami, who has only one eye, not in the center of his head, but just one eye. And Sangha actually describes when he met him, this very, very unusual man with all these sort of disciples, these devotees around him. He said when he talked to him, he looked very fierce. He said he looked like a pirate, a real piratical kind of aspect looking at him. But he said, as he looked and as he talked to this man, he said he'd never seen a face with so much compassion. But his methods to get people to wake up were very, very unusual. He said that the major problem, the reason why people don't gain enlightenment, why they don't make progress, is because of their egotism, their conceit. And he'd give, he instructed his disciples to make very, very elaborate prostrations, not the usual sort of, as you get in India, just a quick bow, but they had to do these full-length prostration with their arms going out and all sorts of things. It's how Bhante first heard about him, because Yalahankar used to send his disciples out and say, whenever you meet a holy man, this is how you should prostrate. And this is a training in overcoming conceit. But he said a very interesting thing to Sangha. He said that there are two kinds of conceit, two kinds of egotism. There's one, the usual one we think, where you're superior to everybody else. Very, very proud, very haughty, which we don't like to admit, do we? But it's there. It's there. In certain situations, it's there. Come on. We do think we're superior to others. Yeah? I think we can say that. But if you don't think that, there's another one where you think you're inferior to others. You're lower, very humble. Oh, I don't know anything. All that kind of thing. And Yalahankar Swami, they're both as bad as each other. And he had a very, very special technique or method. So if somebody came into the room, he's giving a discourse, giving darshan, and he just notices that they're really haughty and conceited, maybe a big government minister or something like that. He'd say, what are you doing here? We don't want your kind here. Get out, and he'd be really, really fierce. Somebody came in thinking, with that, I'm very lonely. He'd say, perhaps you'd like to come and give the talk. Perhaps you'd like to share your wisdom with us. And he used to say, however high you go, I can go higher. However low you go, I can go lower. And Sangha was very, very struck with this. These two kinds of egotism, these two kinds of ways we fix ourselves. Nowadays, most of the people I meet are sort of constantly apologizing for themselves and how lowly they are, and I've got a low self-esteem, and things like that. It is a conceit. It is an egotism. You have to do something about it if you're going to wake up to the way things are. And Sangharakshita, and he was traveling with a friend, another wanderer, and his friend was very proud, and Sangharakshita could be very humble. And they were in retreat together, and Yalahanka Swami sent some of his disciples to see how they were getting on. And these disciples said, "We've got a message for you from Swamiji. Please don't be offended. For the English saint, we're to offer 100 prostrations. For that Bengali fellow, you can give him 1 or 2. And they were both completely shocked because the message was clear. Well, Sangharakshita, you put yourself low. The other one, you put yourself too high. So this wonderful confrontation, very, very direct confrontation, really challenging our egotism so that we wake up. I've had this sort of experience as well, this very strong, again, being confronted with reality, with Sangharakshita himself. Again, the story is from India. When I first went to India, Sangharakshita came out. It was his return to India after being many years away. He was incredibly loved by the Indian Buddhist community. And I was sort of his attendant at that time. So we'd go to these big lectures in the open air, massive lectures, 3,000 people. I'd never seen so many people at a Buddhist lecture. And of course, in India, there's proper courtesies before a Dharma talk. There's all sorts of garlands being offered and introductions, and the atmosphere was extraordinary, wonderful, never seen anything like it. And afterwards, we gather up the garlands, I'd gather up the garlands, I'd put sandals on my teacher's feet, we'd go to the car, we'd go through the crowds, we'd go home. Tremendous sort of atmosphere of devotion. And it was like living the dream, living, if you like, the Buddhist dream of being with your teacher in an atmosphere of incredible sort of faith and inspiration. And I went in, I used to put up his mosquito net at night. So I was putting up his mosquito net and, boiling up his water and all this sort of thing. And I had to say something. I had to say something to express my gratitude, my devotion. You have to understand, I was very young. I was in my early 20s in those days. And I said, Bhante, I don't know what I will do when you die. And he, quick as a flash, he said, well, that's assuming that I will die first. And I ran out of that room really quickly because he kind of looked at me really directly. It was a sort of major teaching on impermanence. But looking back, it was also throwing me back on myself. Because my tendency is to be very devoted. I've always liked to kind of, be in the slipstream of great people. But his message, and it came in all sorts of forms over the years, was you have to live this life. You are responsible for your life. You can do it. You must do it. This confrontation with the necessity for me to take responsibility for my life and not to give it away to him, even though I revered him very profoundly. So in all these different ways, the tantric teacher confronts you, introduces you to the reality of things directly. And then there's that line that Tilopa keeps saying to Naropa, look into your mind, the mysterious home of the Dakini. Look into your mind, the mysterious home of the Dakini, because when you do purify yourself of your egotism, what you encounter then is the nature, the real nature of mind, heart, consciousness, which is actually one with the whole of reality. Because in Buddhism, everything is mind, not in the sense of ideas. Everything is awareness. Everything is luminous awareness. So the Dakini, this is an image of the Dakini. It's a very unusual, very powerful image of the Dakini. But really, she's the symbol of the awakened mind, which is there, fully present if we can purify ourselves of our egotism. So our mind, she's naked. For a start, let's just look at her nakedness. There's a few adornments, but she is naked. The mind itself is naked. The true nature of mind is that it has no adornment. It's absolutely without elaboration. It's completely open. It's unfabricated. All of our ideas that swirl around cover that nakedness of mind, that naked reality of things. So in Tantra Buddhism, they make a lot of nakedness, but what they're trying to communicate is complete openness, complete freshness. You know, the direct encounter without words and elaborations with the way things are. So she's naked, she's red. She's blood red, the colour of passion, the colour of love, the colour of great bliss. This is so, so important in Tantric Buddhism. The mind is, when you experience the nakedness of mind, you experience great bliss. You experience great bliss because all your trips, all your bad trips, all your good trips, you know, all your conditioning, you know, all your games just fall away. All those things that imprison you have gone, and you just enter into this blissful state, which is free. She's dancing. She's dancing. So it's a state of complete freedom. When you discover the nature of mind, the mysterious home of the Dakini, there is no boundary to your consciousness. There's no boundary to it. Self and other are completely transcended and seen through. So then there is the great compassion and the great love. You start really seeing other people as they are in themselves, you know, without any coverings, you know, without anything interfering with who they are. You know, this is why the Tantric Guru is so effective, because there's nothing between him or her and us. They can reach into our deepest heart and draw it forth and inspire it into being, doing whatever they want to do to bring that about. So that's why, you know, so often great teachers are so loved. I mean, the great teachers are really loved, you know, because we feel so seen by them. So seen, yeah, they confront our stuff that gets in the way, but we know that actually what they really care for is our awakening. Our encounter with the way things are. It doesn't matter, and they're quite happy to be completely dispensable. You know, as soon as you get somewhere with a teacher, they just leave you. And that can be very, very upsetting. I mean, the greatest thing that a teacher does is to die. They say that's the highest teaching of a teacher, because you're thrown back on yourself. I mean, that was, you know, when Sangha died, I mean, it was deeply upsetting for me, really upsetting, because that contact, that direct contact with reality that I revered so much, the man who I revered so much, who took me completely seriously, more seriously than I took myself, that contact had gone. But of course, that's a fantastic teaching. It's the ultimate teaching. No, you have to do it. You've got to be in touch with that. That's your job now. Don't be reliant. So compassion, freedom, nakedness, and she's adorned with a garland of death's heads, which symbolize, of course, impermanence, shunyata, because this mind isn't a thing. There's nothing fixed about it. It's completely empty. It's completely alive. There's nothing fixed about it. Yeah, it's shunyata. It's emptiness itself. So the mind, somebody who realizes their mind directly, they don't take things so seriously. This is the weird thing about being around great teachers, great spiritual friends. It's very, very weird, because actually they take everything really seriously, and in a way they don't. The things that we take seriously, they don't take seriously. The things that we don't take seriously, they take seriously. So it's a very, very strange thing to be around. I mean, one of the things that's very important to have when you're leading a Buddhist life, and Tantric teachers exemplify this, is a sense of humor. You need to be able to really laugh at yourself and even allow yourself to be laughed at sometimes, your utter foolishness, and be able to have a good laugh at it. And you take everything absolutely seriously. So yes, this is what the Tantric master does. And how are we doing for time? 5 minutes to go, I think. Is that all right? One last thing? Yeah? Okay. So where do we go from here? Looking into the mind, the secret home of the Dakini, when egotism has been removed. Well, you start moving into realms. You start moving into the realm of jnana. Jnana meaning non-dual awareness. It's a way of talking about wisdom in Tantric Buddhism. But when you talk about non-dual awareness, when you talk about jnana, which can be translated as knowledge, again, you can interpret that as something intellectual, and it's not. The Tantric master, somebody who is an adept in Tantric Buddhism, sees the entire world as the manifestation of the 5 Buddha families. Wisdom is experienced here and now in this realm. And it takes many different forms. And a Tibetan teacher who did a lot to further the Dharma in America, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, talks about this in such an interesting way. And Sangha put me onto this. He talks about the different kind of realms of jnana. So there's the Vajra realm associated with the Buddha Akshobhya. And the feel of this jnana is winter. A winter morning. The sun's coming up. Everything is white and cold. Everything is clear and distinct. Everything is reflected perfectly. Everything is cut through to this pristine purity. The snow is crisp. It's reflecting the sunlight. Everything is brilliant and clear. This is the mirror-like jnana of the Vajra family. This is the mood. This is the feeling of that. Then you have the realm of Ratnasambhava, the jewel born, or the jewel producer, the jewel creator. This is the yellow Buddha of the south. And this is this time of year. This is autumn in the south. This is abundance. This is ripe fruit. This is those lovely, warm autumn days kind of turning cooler. This is harvest. This is the realm of jewels, abundance, gratitude, dignity. This is the distinctively human realm where everybody is seen with the sameness jnana, the wisdom of sameness. The dignity is that everybody has dignity, and you feel a tremendous pride with everybody in their humanness, in their living beingness, and you feel that richness and abundance, and you give from that abundance. And then you have the lotus family, the realm of Amitabha, the red Buddha, infinite light in the West. It's springtime. It's blossom. It's flowers coming after the long winter. Everything very clear and distinct. Amitabha is passion, is love, utterly purified. His realm is, his mood is the distinguishing wisdom, the wisdom of particularity. You know that thing when you love somebody very, very much, when you're sort of in love with somebody, you really dwell on their details, don't you? You really love every single bit of them. Well, in this realm, this is purified passion. This is the passion of springtime, where you see that distinct quality in everybody. You are in love with everybody, with everything, with every living being. This is the realm of Amitabha. Passion utterly transformed into the wisdom of discrimination, or the wisdom of particularity. And then you go into the green realm, the deep green realm, the realm of the green Buddha, Amoghasiddhi, the infallible success. This is late summer. This is thunder. This is lovely green forests in the northern realm. This is marshland. This is these hinterlands between, land and water. This is the realm of mysterious action, mysterious siddha action. This is the realm where your wisdom is making all sorts of changes. It's having all kinds of effects, but mysteriously, selflessly. It's said of the tantric masters, the real tantric adda, they come in, they're like a ghost. They're like a ghost. They come into somewhere. They have this extraordinary effect, and then they disappear. And people say, well, who was that? What was that? What happened there? We all feel different. So this is to do with spontaneous, compassionate activity. This is the green realm of the green Buddha. And then finally, you have the white Buddha, Vairochana, the illuminator, the great sun Buddha, and his wisdom of the Dharma Dhatu. This is desert. This is space. This is perhaps, you'll know this better than I, places up in the peak where it's completely open, vast space that contains absolutely everything, that contains all the other wisdoms. This is the mood of the wisdom of the cosmos. So this is the wisdom, the realms in which the tantric adepts occupy. In other words, a world completely transformed as far as they're concerned. They're always in that realm. Other people might not realize they're in that realm. They realize they're in that realm. And this is why they are so effective as teachers, and why their compassion is so effective. So that's my little talk on the Tantra. There we go. I'm sure I'm getting some really dodgy looks from tantric masters who are looking down on me, raising their eyebrows. So I hope you'll keep me safe. Thank you very much.